it's really just to add to that, and I mean, I think you can hear the way that Caroline's described. It's the way that the scores are calculated and the scoring system is taken directly from the GMC standards. So don't forget to look at them. They're very much leaning on the GMC standards that are used across for the interview panel. So if you look at, they're freely available. So I'm not saying that all interview score sheets will be like that, but if we think about all of the UK curriculums, they're all aligned, all of them now, with the GMC standards. So a lot of them will be aligned with the GMC standards, the interview questions. So think on.
The topics covered in this video are: interview scores, part 2, do you have any questions? Answered, status of interview results, tips to deal with rejection.
Because each of the questions are scored, one thing I don't think we've touched on yet is if you don't hear the question properly, or if you don't understand the question, just ask. And just say, I'm sorry I didn't catch that, or please can you repeat that, rather than starting talking on what you think you heard, because you could take yourself from top marks to a 0 because you're not actually asking the question. So listen to what the question is and try and work out what they're trying to achieve by that question.
Thank you for those answers. Another common question that is on the mind of a lot of people who give interviews is this last question with which interviews often end is, do you have any questions? So the people attending the interview will obviously have a lot of questions about their expectations from the job, maybe about future training opportunities and stuff like that. So what do you think is the best way in which we can go about these questions?
If you start asking all the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day job, things like that, that's the stuff that we would expect you to have found out before the interview with these phone calls that we mentioned earlier. So, don't start asking what's the rota going to be, or, can I have 2 weeks off in, a month after I start the job. Training opportunities and development are probably a good thing because, again, they show that you're wanting to learn, wanting to move on. But you're far better saying, no, I haven't got any because I've spoken to somebody in the unit and I've got an idea of what the job entails. Thank you. And then sort of closing it on that.
I think I echo Caroline's statements. So saying that, that you don't have anything to ask, it does suggest that or you can say that I've done my pre-interview visits and I've spoken to everyone and I pretty much know about the department. So that gives an indication that you have already spoken and you've done the paperwork already, and that you have already spoken to people, and then you know the right information. Unless you have got any persisting or something which is relevant to your career progression, for example, like you are interested in some subspecialty, will I get that interest, or will I be able to work with so and so because I do have a subspecialty interest. Like for example in orthopedics, like if you're keen on doing knees and stuff, so you can say that I know this is a middle grade job, but I have got special interest in knees, and I do note that from the job description that so and so person does knees. Is there an opportunity that I'll be able to work for him? So that shows that you are already thinking more in line with how you will progress in your career. So that will be good, rather than asking like, oh, when I can take my annual leave or when I can take my study. That pisses off the panel, So please don't ask those questions. Those questions are once you have entered the job, then you can do whatever you want, but not before before you have been offered the job.
Yes.
Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or single player?
That's not those kind of questions.
So like after the interview, if we haven't received any response, like after a few days, like how do we know about the status of the interview?
Mostly, within 24 hours, you'll be contacted to get to let you know that whether you've been successful or not. So most of the places will make an attempt to contact you and say that you haven't got the job. But within 24 hours, if you have not been contacted, then it is more likely that you haven't got the job. It'll be a bit of a you know, you'll obviously feel let down that you didn't get the job. So I think some of you might be in denial that I didn't get the job. So I think it's a good thing to let at least 48 hours go. But it's always a good thing to ask for feedback from the panel, you know, and then, you know, because obviously when we do, you know, write on the interview notes, we do comment on what are the things you have not done. And so you've got every right to get those feedbacks, which will, you know, help you in identifying what you don't have or what you have failed to do. And so that will be used to help you in the future interviews. But you have got a right to ask the interview panel for the feedback, and that's usually available. But always give a period of like 3 or 4 days or a week before you ask for the feedback, because the first thing is we always, you know, you feel that you have done the interview very well, and so when you get the information that you have not got the interview, so you are in a bit of a mode of denial, and so you would not like the feedback. But give it a week, you know, you have settled down, you have become more to your normal status, and then when you get the feedback, then you'll be more in acceptance mode, and then you will try and make the necessary corrections or you know, the learning things you need to do to be more successful in the next interview.
You should have a contact number of the person who's actually invited you for the interview, even if they've not actually been present at the interview. And that might be somebody in HR, it might be a manager in the department. But the best thing is to go back from there, and if you go back to them nicely saying, I haven't heard anything, please can I just check you've got the right phone number, or please can I check that you've got the right email address, because it may be that somebody's been frantically trying to get you. And again, previous experience, if you've been interviewed from abroad, make sure that whatever the code for your country is on your CV. There's a lot of information that is initially hidden from the shortlisters on your CV, so we can't be biased. So we can't see personal details when we first shortlist you. But after we've appointed or offered you the job, we then get to see those personal details, and that's how we get the phone numbers or the email. And if there isn't a country code on that, it can make it harder to contact. So time is good, but also just make sure that people have got the right contact numbers for your contact information.
I think it's really just the same. That would perhaps be the only valid question, is how long could I wait to hear whether I've been successful at the end of the interview, if they haven't really made it clear. Usually they say candidates will be contacted, and they usually give you a summing up at the end. So if you've not heard before you've left, you could just clarify with the panel when you expect to hear. And there's usually someone from HR on the panel who's introduced themselves, so you could just have a chat with them before you leave, so you know when to hear. So there's no uncertainty on your part before you actually leave the interview. It might be the last thing on your mind though at that point in time. And I think whatever the feedback and whatever the outcome of your interview, I think you have to get into the mindset that it's all feedback and that you've put in your effort and it's a learning experience, because we can't expect to be successful at every interview that we apply for, because you're surrounded by really top quality candidates who are going for tough jobs. So I think you have to get into that mindset, to do hard though it is, to come away and think, well, what really went well and what did I think? Because if you do that, you'll have learned from that interview if it did go really well and you did get the job, because you'll probably have other interviews to go for in the future, and you will be interviewing other people, and you'll have learned something from that interview in itself. And I think trying to take away from all of these experiences as a learning experience is a really useful thing to do as well. And I kind of, painful though it can be to do, it's a really useful thing to do, because it'll allow you to move on more quickly as well.
So that brings me to my final question here, and that is, if unfortunately we are not selected, if the applicant is not selected for the interview and it is a rejection, if there's any tips that you can tell us about on how to deal with this and how to do better next time, that would be great.
So I think that This is not an uncommon scenario given the numbers of interviews and the numbers of candidates that there are for medical interviews across the board. I think the most important thing is to come out of an interview, whatever interview you've gone for, and try to jot down what's actually happened straight away, whatever the outcome's going to be, what kind of questions you were asked, what kind of answers you think you gave. This is even before you know the outcome, because it'll help you by the time you actually get the results of the outcome, to think about actually what you think went well and what you think you could have done better on. You might be surprised about what the outcome was, that you were successful, and if you weren't successful, then you'll think, well, actually critically this is the area that I don't think I did so well on, and then you hopefully will get some feedback from the panel when the time comes, because most panels are quite happy to give you some feedback about the areas that they feel that you could have developed or could develop for any future interviews, because we're very aware about how difficult the interview process is and what we're looking for in the future, because we may be advertising a whole pile of similar jobs in a future round in 12 months' time, and be happy to have you back to apply again. So I think seeing this whole process as a part of a process that we're going through for life, really, because it's not a static process. We're going to be going through interviews at the ST level, maybe ST3 level, at consultant level. It's definitely a lifelong learning process, and also you're going to be sitting on the other side of the panel and looking for successful interviewees yourself. So I think we've all got something to learn going forward.
I haven't got sort of anything to add for negative feedback, but it's also worth that if you are successful and you get the post, you can still ask for feedback as to what went well, and that again is part of your learning process and part of something going forward. And also again, the honesty comes in, because we have a number of candidates that we offer the post to, and then a week later or 3 weeks later they pull out of the post, and that isn't something that's generally seen favourably. And therefore, if you accept a job, we would expect somebody to have that job and to take that job. And if there's a good reason, you've got 3 interviews in the space of a week and you're not sure which you're going for, then just say, well, thank you very much, I've got a couple of other interviews coming up, can you just give me a week to say whether I want to take the job or not. Because if you are applying to lots of jobs, you may lose track of where you've applied for, where you've interviewed for, and it's not going to be seen very favourably if in 12 weeks, as Claire says, when we re-advertise, you apply for the job again. We're going to sort of hang on, this candidate messed us around before. But obviously, if you get negative feedback, learn from it.
I think pretty much, echo Caroline's statements. I've been to several interviews, and obviously there are always better candidates than you. So it's nothing personal there. I think we'll have to take it in the stride and use it as a learning experience. Don't micro-dissect your performance, because it is always, our immediate, reaction. Maybe I should answer this question well. A lot of things, depend upon, how prepared you are for the interview. Because in an interview, always there will be few questions which you are not prepared for. So that's why it's better to prepare, invest more time in preparing for the questions. But there's always be 1 or 2 questions where you didn't answer well. And secondly, again, there might be better candidates who are more or well suited for the job. So you have to always accept that, and you just have to accept it, and just prepare yourself better for the next interview, and hope that the luck goes down your way. So that's the only thing I'd say. But don't do the micro dissection or post-mortem analysis and then dissecting each and every answer. That actually adds a lot of stress, and that destroys your self-confidence. So don't do those things. And if you think you're not answering well, or if you feel that your answering technique is not well, one technique I would say is that now everyone has got a smartphone, so where you have a recorder app. So you can actually, what you do is that you can record yourself, so you can know like how you are answering, your body language, your mannerisms, and then you can replay it back, and then you can see how you are answering, and you can actually improve on that. And I've done it myself personally, because one of the interview feedbacks I had was I was answering quite fast in the interviews, so I had to I got this recorder app, and then I went through the common scenarios like take me through your CV, standard box standard questions. So I recorded myself how I was answering, and it took me like 10-15 attempts before I got the rhythm. And so things like that, so learn from your feedback, and then try to improve yourself, and hopefully you'll be successful at one point.
So thank you very much for this. It has been extremely valuable. So I want to thank Pregash, Caroline and Clare for the extremely valuable inputs, which I'm sure is going to be very useful for anyone attending an interview, or even someone who's attended interviews and is looking forward to the next thing. So yeah, thank you.
So I just wanted to touch upon Clare's topic, which is said about being passionate. I think these two scenarios are from real life. I was an SHO at that time, working in a spinal unit, and we had a neurosurgical registrar who was a German. So at one point I was asking my consultant, so how good was this guy in the interview? He said, I asked him like, why did you give him the job? And then he said, he was very, very average. And he said, but why did he give the job? So he said, he was the only chap who made an effort to travel all the way from Germany to Liverpool. So I was doing this job in Liverpool. So he traveled all the way to Liverpool to speak to me about the job, while the rest of them were UK candidates who never even bothered to travel up to Liverpool. So they were all in UK, they never bothered. So a couple of the guys rang up and then spoke on the phone. And when they are advised to come and visit the department, they never bothered to visit. Whereas this guy, he took a flight and came all the way from Germany to Liverpool to see the department, and he said that was the only reason I gave him the job, because he showed that he needed the job more than others, and he was more passionate about the job. He said he didn't have anything in his CV. So these small things matter. I mean, it's not a small thing, traveling from Germany to Liverpool, but it showed that he was more enthusiastic about the job. He wanted to learn, and he has showed his passion by committing himself, traveling all the way, and then coming to the job. So that was the only basis he said. He did very average on the interview. And I can say from my own experience, I didn't get a consultant job in London, primarily because I never traveled there to visit the department. The only reason being, I spoke to a couple of consultants, and then they said like, oh, that's fine, don't worry, none of us are here in the department anyway, so don't waste your time traveling all the way. And then I blindly believed that, and then I went for the interview, and the feedback was, the clinical lead said, this guy never even bothered to come. He was the best in the interview, but he never even bothered to come and visit the department. So I'm not going to offer to someone who doesn't even, have the passion to, come up to visit the department. In spite of two of his colleagues telling me that, don't bother turning up because we are not there. So I was foolish, I just believed, and then, I didn't bother to go. So you can show passion in so many ways. So at least picking up the phone, speaking to the department, if it's close by, make an effort to travel to the department. That shows that you're passionate and committed about the job, and that will land you up with the job.
It was that really that you can't be yourself too much during an interview. You should, if candidates are wooden and anxious, that's the one of the areas that's the biggest areas where candidates fall down, and it's been mentioned before by my colleagues during the interview, but I think that's where they lose the most points. So they don't show their passion and enthusiasm for their specialty that they're trying to get into, or their job that they really want, and they're so nervous that they don't act like themselves anymore. So I think that's my biggest appeal, that when you're going for an interview, don't forget to be yourself, to smile, to greet the candidates, to make eye contact, and really let your own personality shine through, because I think that that's what we're looking for. We're looking for human beings to join our team, and we really want people who can be there in the moment, and can be present, and can be there and connect with us and can connect with patients. So that's who we need.
So following it on from what Claire said, we do need you to be yourself, but please, if you are somebody who is very extrovert with loads of hand movements or loads of sort of body movements. We don't want somebody who's fidgeting and waving their hands around, because that's very distracting and it takes you away from what people are saying. So think of how you appear, but equally somebody who's sat there with a fixed grin on their face for the whole way through is also unnatural. So, you know, we don't want Cheshire Cats, we do want, and if you look serious for part of it, that's fine. If you want to smile, or if somebody says something that's amusing, join in with the moment of the interview and laugh at that, but please don't sort of sit there with a fixed expression for the whole of the interview. Thanks.